What's going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of the FF Ballbusters podcast, and welcome to 2024. It's a brand new year. My name is Will. Joining me is my co-host Eric, and today we're going to talk three running backs who we feel like their value has peaked, and you should probably try to cash in on that value as soon as you can. But before we get into that, Eric, you got anything for the people?
Yeah, man, real quickly, huge shout out to you guys. Big thank you. We hit a giant milestone for our channel recently. We hit 1,000 subscribers. Couldn't be more happy, couldn't be more humbled and more appreciative of all the support that we've gotten as of late. But the road doesn't end here. We got to keep the momentum going. So if you guys continue to enjoy the content, please do leave a like, hit that sub button, and also hit the notification bell to stay in the know for all of our latest videos. And also leave us a comment. This is going to be potentially a controversial video. Obviously, these guys are coming off of really good seasons. So if you have any questions, if you disagree, agree, any of that stuff, let us know in the comments below, and we'd be more than happy to talk it out. But with that, I think I'm ready to get into it.
Absolutely. So, getting into that, we're going to get into the first running back that we wanted to talk about, and that guy is going to be Mr. Kyren Williams, one of the best stories of the season so far. He's obviously carried a lot of fantasy teams to the championship this year. Also, congratulations to anybody who did win their championship out there, by the way. If you're still playing, what are you doing? But yeah, with that being said, Eric, let's give a little context into this one because I know this is definitely a spicier take for the people.
Yeah, so the way that I had this framed, I wanted to talk about two guys at the same time. So sorry if we're kind of spoiling them at the same time. But Isiah Pacheco is also on this list for us, two of the three guys that we're going to be talking about. And the reason I wanted to lump them together is because I wanted to talk about day three running backs in general. Kyren Williams being a fifth round pick, Isiah Pacheco being a seventh round pick. So obviously they're both taken on day three. Some context for guys like that. In the last 5 years, from 2018 to 2022, there have been 12 running backs drafted day three or later, so including undrafted free agents, that have finished top 15 at the position either in points per game or overall. Nine of those 12, so 75%, have failed to ever get back inside the top 15 after that season. And only three of those players, 25%, have ever done it more than once, that being Chris Carson, Aaron Jones, and Austin Eckler. And those percentages are actually really generous. They would have been way more lopsided if I had increased the parameters to the top 25 and went back even more than 5 years. Having it at top 15 excludes some dynasty hopefuls that just missed these thresholds. We're talking about guys like Damian Pierce, Tyler Algier, Elijah Mitchell, Michael Carter, Khalil Herbert, and Myles Gaskin. All guys that had hype in the dynasty community, that had hope to being top 10 fantasy running backs, that never really amounted to that. So I'd like to hear your take on these guys and also some of the guys that I mentioned there and like how their context could be applied to these guys as well.
No, I think that is a very good take. Like you said, like Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, they've kind of been outliers their entire career. Austin Eckler obviously really getting the opportunity because Melvin Gordon sold his opportunity. But also Austin Eckler was doing well at the time too, so I don't want to take anything away from him. He's been absolutely electric since he's gotten the opportunity. But guys like James Robinson, who came in and were extremely good their rookie year, you know what I mean? But if you were looking back at that in context, the best time to sell James Robinson would have been after that year because it was a steady decline afterwards until what we have now. Now, of course, there's context to that. He did, suffer an Achilles injury. Was it twice for him, or was that? I'm thinking of Cam Akers, I believe, in that
Yeah,
situation.
Cam Akers.
But James Robinson suffered an Achilles injury, and obviously it's been super downhill since then. And a lot of people probably wish they had sold him earlier than they did. And I feel like that's kind of the thing that kind of goes with these day three running backs. It's not a whole lot of stability in terms of, job security. Now, I feel like a lot of people do think that with Kyren Williams, there is some job security there just because Sean McVay does love him. And, the Rams are pretty good at picking skill players later in the drafts and, finding those values, especially in like guys like Puka, stuff like that. But especially looking at guys like Isiah Pacheco, it's tough to be super certain that he's going to have a secure job going forward, especially with his role in the team. Like this year, he has been sort of like the pass catching back, but I think that's more so out of necessity than out of his actual skill because a guy runs like the ground owes him money. So I don't think that he's a natural pass catcher. I feel like he's somebody that they could easily bring in someone. I feel like the Chiefs are going to be pretty aggressive in the offseason this year because they saw how much of a difference having skill players can make to that team. And I feel like the running back position and having someone who could be that natural pass catcher is someone they're going to look to bring in this offseason, and which is going to cut into Pacheco's value possibly going forward. And with Kyren Williams, I feel like this year it's weird because I feel like this year wasn't supposed to happen. I feel like, in terms of how he tested, I don't want to look too much at combines because, combines don't really tell the whole story, but he did test as one of the worst running backs at the combine that year that he got drafted. He was projected to be like a 6th to 7th round pick, ended up getting picked in the 5th, but he's just a guy who it feels like this season wasn't supposed to happen. He's an undersized guy as well, at like 5'9", 194. He's had some injury issues as he's come into the league. I believe he broke his foot before he even entered into the league. He rehabbed back, got back in his first play of the game. His first play of the season, he injured himself on a punt return. And then obviously this year he got hurt again and was on IR for a little while. So it's not the most steady situation for him. He is someone that they could bring in someone to help supplement that role as well. And with this guy, he's also gotten a ton of opportunity this year. And I'm not really sure if they are to bring in somebody else, if that same opportunity is to go forward. But it is kind of strange for me. I feel like the running back position was weird this year. And obviously, he finished with the second most rushing yards and was out for 4 games, I believe, 3, 4 games. So it's a lot of stuff going on that I don't really feel like is sustainable going forward. So, like you said, I just don't feel a whole lot of security with these two guys. So I feel like the value here is where it could kind of reach a cap.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I do want to acknowledge that, like, in all the guys that I listed, none of the day 3 running backs that I talked about ever averaged 20 half PPR points per game like Kyren Williams did this season. So I want to give him his praise. He had a
Hmm.
fantastic year. And, that includes Eckler, Jones, Carson. Like, none of those guys have reached that level of peak. It's really impressive what he did. So to your point, if there was going to be an outlier from this day 3 group, it would probably be Kyren that you'd want to bet on. Um, but one, the likelihood of him being able to repeat, considering his draft capital and the team investment, is low. And to your point, what you talked about with Sean McVay loving him, after Todd Gurley, who was a top 10, top 5 pick in the draft, he was the only one that had sustained startable ability for Sean McVay. After that, it's been a revolving door of starting running backs every single year. We've had Darrell Henderson, we've had Cam Akers. It wasn't even Kyren Williams to start this season.
Yeah,
Who was
it
the
was
starter? I don't even.
it was Cam Akers to start the season. He was just really bad. Yeah.
Yeah, true. And then he fell off, and then yeah, we got to see Kyren Williams kind of blossom. So I just this idea that Sean McVay loves him, and so he's going to have that job security and be around for a long time. I'm not really buying into that, even though I do think he does like him a lot. But I just don't think that matters necessarily for his longevity. Um, and then to kind of make a bigger point here, because we are talking trash about these day 3 running backs, and I think that's important for probability's sake, but just in general, in terms of like my strategy behind selling running backs high, it could be anybody. It could be guys with high end draft capital. Like, it doesn't matter, because I think running back is just the most volatile position in all of Dynasty, the shortest shelf life, the highest injury risk, and the most susceptible to change in situation. Um, so, like, for example, if you look back to Jonathan Taylor's fantasy value after the year that he finished as the RB1 in 2021, like, we're talking about the poster child for like the perfect running back prospect. He was 23-year-old bell cow, near perfect college production profile, outstanding athletic testing, early second round draft cap. Up to that point, no injury concerns, and obviously was the RB1 the season prior. I went back into DLF's trade finder to look for some real life trades that went down immediately following that season, just to see what we would think about it now. 3 that I found: JT for 2 first round picks, 2 second round picks, and James Robinson. JT for Jalen Waddle, Miles Sanders, a first and a second. And lastly, JT for Calvin Ridley, Brandon Ayuk, Travis Etienne, and a first.
Whoa.
I don't think you can tell me that you wouldn't take any of those in a heartbeat today. Like, immediately, like, I'm taking all of those right now. So it doesn't matter who you are, even if you're a day 3 pick, which I think increases the probability that you're not going to have the job security and not going to be around for a while. But even if you're at the top of the mountain, these trade packages for running backs typically end up being or giving good return on investment, regardless of the situation.
No, that's pretty insane right there. Like you said, every single one of those trades, I would pretty much hit the smash button on right now. Especially that last one with Travis Etienne involved. Crazy. Absolutely
Yeah.
crazy.
No, absolutely. So that's kind of the Kyren Williams and Isiah Pacheco thing. Day three guys typically don't want to bet on, but do want to acknowledge their success. They had great seasons. Now let's talk about Rachaad White. I'll throw to you first. What are your thoughts here?
Rachaad White should not have happened. But he was the RB4 this year. He was the RB4. I feel like he did find a lot of success, especially in PPR leagues, stuff like that, because he just got insane opportunity through the air. He actually got worse on the ground this year. I feel like I've seen a lot of people talking about, oh, he got better on the ground. He didn't. His yards per carry literally went down. So I don't know what people are talking about in that situation. But I just feel like this year was lightning in a bottle. I feel like it was a great situation for him. Of course, with Baker Mayfield loving to check down to running backs. And at a certain point in the season, they kind of figured out, all right, this guy isn't great in between the tackles, so let's just get the ball out to him in space and see what he can do. And it turned into a lot of 1 yard touchdowns on in the red zone, stuff like that. So that's kind of fluky in itself right there. But he did get a ton of opportunity. I don't want to take anything away from him. He did make the most out of the opportunity he had, but it's just a lot of stuff that's weird. Like, he had the third most carries in the league and just really didn't do anything with it. In terms of targets, he was ninth in the league in targets with 66 on the year, which is, of course, kind of an outlier for a running back. It was something we hoped was going to happen this year in terms of his volume, and he has just sort of turned into the ultimate volume play. And something that we've kind of figured out this year, volume isn't always the best thing in the world. We've seen volume kind of fall off, especially with guys like Derrick Henry. Of course, he's starting to get older, but we used to kind of go into it thinking that volume was king, but you kind of got to do something with that volume as well. And this year, I believe he was able to do that in terms of Rachaad White. But next year, we're not really sure how this team is going to look. Mike Evans, kind of a question mark going in the next season. I feel like we were a little bit more certain he was going to return at the beginning, start of the season. But as time has gone along, I'm not really sure where this team is headed in terms of their direction. Baker Mayfield also kind of outperformed what we thought he was going to do this season as well. So I'm not sure if he's going to be able to keep that up or if they're going to stick with him or really what this team is going to do going forward. And like Eric said, situation is going to be a big thing for running backs, especially a guy like Rachaad White, who has kind of proven that he can't really get it done all on his own. So I'm not really sure. I feel like obviously we feel like that his value has sort of reached the maximum of what it's going to be. He was the RB4 this year, and I would probably eat a shoe before I would say that he's going to be anywhere near that again and for the rest of his career. So in terms of max value that you could get out of Rachaad White, this is the time I feel like that you could. But what do you feel about Rachaad White going forward?
No, I'm in lockstep with you. You provided a lot of good stats and arguments for why this is probably not a season that he's going to be able to repeat, but I have even more for you. As a runner this year, Rachaad White was 54th in yards per carry, in true yards per carry, 48th in breakaway run rate, 28th in fantasy points per opportunity, and 134th in EPA. Those numbers are obviously bad, but they get even worse when you consider that he did so in such a positive environment. He had a top 10 O line and faced light boxes more than any other running back in the entire league. His light front carry rate was at 72.3%. And even if you only look at runs versus those light boxes, he still only averaged 3.9 yards per carry. Like, it's so bad. It's
Mm.
so bad. And now, again, you acknowledge the same thing. Running between the tackles has never been his calling card. White's best attribute has always been his pass catching ability and what he can do with the ball in space. To his credit, I will acknowledge, he was able to drastically improve his yards per reception from 5.8, which was 29th in the league last year, all the way up to 8.9, which was 6th in the league this year. But his yards per route run numbers were still middle of the pack at 15th, and his yards per touch numbers were bad at 29th. So, he's inefficient, inconsistent, and not explosive across the board. And even to your point, you said he was the RB4 overall. He was the RB9 in points per game with what you said, the third most rushes in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one, he had the most routes run of any running back in the entire league. So the opportunity was absolutely there. And he turned in like a bottom half RB1 season. Productive, relevant to your fantasy teams. I just don't know that he's going to be able to do that again. And I don't know that he's going to be given the opportunity to do the same thing again, because we've seen it with guys like Najee Harris in recent history. He had even higher draft capital, even better expectations, had all of the opportunity in the world and wasn't efficient, and then brought in Jalen Warren, and he's been eating into his workload ever since. So I just think the same thing is probably going to happen in this situation as well.
Yeah, I think so too. It's weird talking about these running backs and talking about people that are coming into the draft class because I feel like this year's draft class is kind of weird at the running back position. Obviously, there's a lot of buzz right now for Blake Corum after that jump cut, but other than that, outside of him, there's not really a ton of like world breaking, running back prospects. Like I feel like there's going to be a lot of day three guys this year.
Yeah.
So it's tough, like you said, to say that they're going to bring in more people. But I feel like they are going to bring in someone else to sort of contest with Rachaad White. I feel like that's only natural to do to bring in this competition. And it's just only going to hurt Rachaad White's value. It's only going to hurt his value going forward, especially if that running back proves to be even better than him between the tackles. It's going to be tough to really even get Rachaad White on the field except for those special situations where he'll be catching the ball. So it's rough to say, like you said, that Rachaad White is going to be a viable fantasy option. Not really a viable fantasy option, but at least the fantasy option that he was this year going forward. I just don't think that's sustainable at all. So if you're going to get in on that value, I feel like now is the time to try to do that while people are riding as high as they are on Rachaad White.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And back to that same point about the strategy of selling running backs high, regardless of who they are, regardless of draft capital, regardless of the productive season that they had, most of the time when we're talking about running backs coming off of great seasons, the return that you're going to be able to get for them right now is probably going to be worth a lot more than what they're going to be worth this time next year. So I just feel like if you have a long term view, even a 2-3 year view, I think it's worth it to at least explore the trade options for guys like this in Dynasty.
So, in terms of trying to trade someone like this, because I know people are going to sound off in the comments already, we'll sell for what? What do you think people should be looking for in terms of value for these players? What do you think people should be aiming for to try to trade for?
So that's a really good point, and we should probably transition over to keep trade cut to talk about that. Up right now on the screen, we have the rankings for the running back position. We have Kyren sitting all the way up at RB6. We have Rachaad White at RB11 and Isiah Pacheco down at RB13. But if we go ahead and we click on Kyren Williams, we can go into Keep Trade Cuts tool where they have value adjacent players. And that can kind of give us an idea, at least for the Keep Trade Cut site and for the general Dynasty community, who is in that kind of valuation range around them right now. And I'll pose this question to you based on who you have on the list right here. Who are you willing to accept in a trade for Kyren Williams that's kind of in his valuation range right now?
So, according to what I have in front of me right here, I've got a 2025 early first, Jonathan Taylor, Jordan Love, Devon Achane, Jordan Addison, and Devonta Smith. And out of that list of people, I would trade him for just about everybody here. Not even just about, I would trade him for everybody here, honestly. If I could get that kind of value out of him, I just feel like the security that comes with everybody else on this list is just a lot more solidified. Obviously, in Superflex, the quarterback position's huge. So, like, being able to trade him for Jordan Love, someone who's really, like, picked it up towards the end of the season and really kind of showed that he's a little bit more than lightning in a bottle. Obviously, Devon Achane, very valued within his offense. Jordan Addison and Devonta Smith, two of the best wide receiver twos in the league, to be honest. So, yeah, and Jonathan Taylor, it kind of goes without saying. So, being honest, I would trade him for just about anyone here if I could get that kind of value for him.
Yeah, there's no question. I'm absolutely giving him away for any of these guys. I do want to mention that for Keep Trade Cut, even with the super flex setting on, I do feel like the site undervalues quarterbacks a little bit. So I don't know that it's necessarily realistic that you'd be able to get Jordan Love for Kyren Williams. Um, but I mean, if you could feasibly get any of these guys for Kyren Williams in your league, I'm absolutely doing that and making that a priority immediately to go make that happen. So couldn't agree more there. And I have a feeling that this is kind of going to be a theme with all of these guys. Just based on the way that we feel about it, they're probably going to be overvalued in our opinions compared to their value adjacent players. So let's go back to the list here. I'll pull up Rachaad White. And looking at it for me, his value adjacent players are going to be Deebo Samuel, a 25 mid first, James Cook, 24 late first, Saquon Barkley, and a 26 early first. Um, in terms of where the firsts are positioned outside of 2024, it's hard to actually predict in your real leagues where those firsts are going to end up. So I'm just kind of treat them as a random first in those years. Regardless, I'm taking firsts for Rachaad White.
Hmm.
2026 is a little bit far out, and so if you're in a competing window right now, I could see the argument for holding on to him. Um, Deebo Samuel, we've talked about throughout the season as being somebody that we thought was a little overvalued, but then he kind of proved us wrong, balled out for the rest of the season. And depending on the situation that plays out in San Francisco, with who stays, because it's probably going to be Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel staying in San Fran. Um, One of them is going to end up in a great situation and have even more volume to play with than what they have right now. Um, so I'd take Deebo for Rachaad White. I'd take the firsts for Rachaad White. James Cook, that's kind of a one for one lateral move. That's more of a preference thing. I also have them kind of back to back, so I'm not too worried about that. Saquon, how do you feel about Saquon? I'm curious where you sit there.
Saquon is tough for me, man, because I feel like he's still good, but I also feel like the Giants are so bad that it doesn't really matter how good Saquon is. It's also going to be interesting to see how they move forward with Saquon after this year because he's got that 1 year deal. Obviously, he
Right.
didn't perform the way I'd assume he would want him to, and I don't know what his payday is going to look like on the other side of it. So I really Saquon's a tough one for me to really invest in long term because I just don't know what's going to happen. I feel like the fall off is coming soon, to be honest, and it kind of hurts to say, but all indicators are kind of pointing towards that, especially if he stays with the Giants as of right now, because I don't really see that team progressing anytime soon. But my list also has Mark Andrews on it as well,
Oh,
instead
that's
of
an
Debo
easy.
Samuels. That's an easy smash for me too.
Yeah, give
So
me that.
absolutely. But what do you think about Saquon?
It's. I agree with everything that you said. I think he's still got some left in the tank. But obviously, we feel similarly about Rachaad White. We don't think that his job security or longevity in terms of the opportunity that he's going to be given is going to continue to be there for the next few years. So I, where did Saquon even finish this year? Let me check.
Not well.
Sa- Saquon finished as the RB11 in points per game at 13.8, and was lower in total fantasy points because he missed 3 games, I believe.
Just a weird year for
So
running backs.
yeah, but in terms of points per game, he really wasn't that far behind Rachaad White. Actually, Rachaad White was at 14, Saquon at 13.8 in half point PPR. Yeah, just with the age difference and the questions around whether he's going to be back with the team, I could see holding on to Rachaad White in that situation. But that one's close for me as well.
Yeah,
I guess this is probably a good thing. I had said that it was going to be a theme that we would probably take almost all of these assets for any of these running backs, but this is a situation where we can actually see kind of the bottom end of what we would take. So I'd probably keep Rachaad White over Barkley. I'd probably keep him over James Cook as well, but the rest of the guys on the list, I would absolutely take in exchange.
absolutely. It's like you said, James Cook more of a lateral movement than an upgrade or a downgrade in any way.
Yeah. All right. And then lastly, we can take it back and go to Isiah Pacheco. Let's see what we have here. For me, we have Stephon Diggs, David Njoku, Bryce Young, George Pickens, George Kittle, and a 25 late first.
Okay. Mine also has Jaden Reed at the top of my list too. That was somebody
Oh,
we had talked about once before, and I would absolutely make that trade for Jaden Reed 100,000% of the time.
we are a very pro Jaden Reed channel over here.
Yeah.
Give us all of the Jaden Reed that we can possibly get. Love that guy. Um, but some of these I think are a little bit interesting. David Njoku, I would take. I'm loving his trajectory right now. Bryce Young, I would take, but again, same thing that I mentioned. The quarterbacks are a little bit undervalued on keep trade cuts, so I'm not sure if that's realistic. But let's talk about the rest of the guys. Stephon Diggs, obviously huge fall off at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Started really, really hot as one of the top 3 receivers in fantasy. and then I think ended, I forget what the week span was, but over the, basically back half was like the wide receiver 54. It
Yeah.
was real bad. Um, do you see a bounce back coming for him? I mean, I don't think we can really project him to continue to be the wide receiver 54, but do you think that he's going to find himself back in that elite group, or what do you think for Stephon?
I think so, but the Bills were such a weird team this year as well in terms of just their production, stuff like that, and just the storylines. I feel like they were kind of not really following the team, but kind of plaguing the team throughout the season. I feel like there was a lot of narratives saying that like Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, not really seeing eye to eye. The chemistry just isn't there like it used to be. And if that kind of continues to be the case, I'm not really sure what Stephon Diggs looks like in the future. He's already he's 30 years old now, about to turn
I believe so,
31.
yeah.
So he is getting up there, but obviously I don't think he's taken a step back talent wise at all yet. So
Yeah.
it's just I I would believe in the bounce back for Stephon Diggs. I think brighter days are ahead. I feel like it was just a really bad slump for them, and I think they'll be coming out of it at some point pretty soon. But I don't know. This list is kind of strange for me too, because like George Pickens being on the list, he's somebody who really, really picked it up over the season. He's like my guy for this year that I kind of got to apologize to. I feel like we were very negative towards NFL young boy, and then he's really balled out at the end of the season. It just turns out Kenny Pickett was ass, and he just needed somebody to get him the ball, which is what he's been telling us. So I guess we kind of got to listen to these receivers sometimes when they say stuff like that. But
He wasn't lying.
yeah, not at all. Kenny Pickett, terrible. But George Pickens able to definitely pick it up, and honestly, he's somebody I would definitely look at for a trade in this situation as well, just for the long term longevity that the wide receiver position kind of gives over running backs too. And Isiah Pacheco, like we talked about earlier, I'm just not really sure what his role in that offense is going to be going forward. So like, I feel like everybody on this list I would just about take over him, just because like even with Diggs, like we talked about earlier, there was a fall off, but I still think he's the best wide receiver on this team by a wide margin.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a matter of them all getting on the same page again. And even if he were to leave and go somewhere else, I think he would still find, a similar amount of success. So
Yeah.
my list also includes Kyle Pitts here as well. What
Oh,
would
give me
you?
Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I would
No
also take
question.
Kyle Pitts. I would also do that.
I'm not giving up on Kyle Pitts. Absolutely want that. Um, but yeah, you mentioned Pacheco's role, like we talked about earlier in the video. It's kind of the opposite as what we talked about with Rachaad White, where he's better as a pass catcher, and we could easily see the Buccaneers bring in someone who's going to be a better early down grinder, better in between the tackles. Pacheco, we could see them bring in a pass catcher or something to take that part of the role away from him, because I think he was just kind of forced into that with Jerick McKinnon's injuries and the lack of other pass catchers behind him at this point. So yeah, I think his role could shrink. So I would take Stephon Diggs, like you said. I do expect to bounce back. George Pickens, I also apologize. I was also on the negative end of his spectrum. I'm still not 100% sold, but obviously what we saw over the back half of the season was really, really impressive. So just with age and the evaluation of the position, I think I'd rather have Pickens over Pacheco. Mine has Kittle.
Now that one was interesting. That's probably one I
Yeah,
wouldn't be as eager to accept out of all of them. I feel like.
I I agree. I wouldn't be as eager to accept.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it depends on league settings. Is it tight end premium, and the composition of your current roster? There would be a lot of things to take into consideration there. Another thing that we talked about with Debo Samuel
Mm-hmm.
is one of those receivers is going to leave almost for sure. So it's going to open up the target tree, the opportunity for a guy like George Kittle, because we assume he is going to stay with the contract that he currently has. He's getting older, but we could see him even improve from what he did this season. Does that change anything for you with where he is in age, or are you still sticking with Isiah Pacheco?
I think where he's in is an age, I don't think it really matters as much at the tight end position, especially for what George Kittle
True.
offers to the team. Like he's a great blocker, stuff like that. So he's going to find himself on the field a lot. And athletically, he's always had issues with, staying healthy his entire career. So I don't really think that's going to become something that's really a factor now. Like that's not going to be the deciding factor now. So like you
Yeah.
said, if the field opens up more, he gets more opportunity. I could see a George Kittle trade for Isaiah Pacheco, especially like tight end premium, getting that kind of
Yeah.
value out of that. That would be awesome.
Yeah. No, I like that as well. All right. So I think that will do it. Obviously, for most of these guys and the value adjacent players, we said that we would take almost everybody on the list in exchange for them. So we didn't get to see the bottom end or what we wouldn't accept in most cases. So if you have specific trade questions, should I trade these running backs for this player? Let us know that down in the comments below, and we would be more than happy to help you out. And also, like we said at the top, if you could do all that great YouTube stuff for us, keep that momentum going, hit the like button if you're enjoying the content, hit the sub button, and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all of our latest videos. But that's all I got. Will, do you have anything left to say to the people?
Absolutely, guys. Make sure you check out those links down in the description below to our sponsor over at Do Numbers. Get you some cool merch, hoodies, stuff like that. And also, make sure you click that link down in the description to our Discord. If you guys want to have that one-on-one sort of conversation with us, trying to join that community, we got a great group of guys. 30 guys in there right now that just kind of all talk fantasy stuff like that, especially during championship week. Stuff was a little hectic, so it's a good time. So make sure you click that link down in the description below. Join that community if you want that one-on-one sort of personal interaction. But, with that being said, thank you guys so much. And if you made it this far into the video, as always, we love you. And we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.